you keep attracting broken people, energy vampires, and manipulators, while the healthy, balanced people seem to pass you by. This isn't bad luck. There's a specific reason your Sigma traits act like a magnet for the exact wrong people. And once you understand why, you can finally break the cycle. As a Sigma male, you probably thought your independence and emotional strength would attract strong, healthy people. Instead, you find yourself constantly dealing with narcissists, codependents, fixers, and emotionally unstable individuals who won't leave you alone. Meanwhile, the secure, balanced people you'd actually want to know seem completely uninterested or barely notice you exist. Today, we're exposing the brutal truth about why your Sigma traits create a toxic attraction pattern and what you need to understand to finally attract the right people instead of the wrong ones. By the end of this video, you'll understand the psychological mechanism that's been sabotaging your relationships your entire life. Reason 1. Your emotional stability attracts chaos addicts. Here's the first brutal truth. Your calm, centered energy acts like a beacon for people who are drowning in emotional chaos. Ever notice how the most dramatic, unstable people seem to gravitate toward you? That's not coincidence. Your emotional regulation is exactly what chaos-addicted people are desperately seeking to stabilize themselves. Here's the psychological mechanism. People who can't regulate their own emotions are unconsciously searching for someone who can. Your Sigma traits, emotional self-sufficiency, calm demeanor, steady presence, signal that you have what they lack. The specific types this attracts: women with unresolved trauma who see you as their healer, drama-addicted individuals who need your calm to balance their chaos, emotionally volatile people who use your stability as an anchor, crisis-prone individuals who want you to rescue them repeatedly, people who mistake your strength for an invitation to unload their problems. Why this creates a toxic pattern? These people aren't attracted to you. They're attracted to the emotional regulation service they think you'll provide. You become their unpaid therapist, emotional support animal, and crisis management system. Most people don't realize this, but chaos addicts can sense emotional stability from across a room. Your centered energy is like a lighthouse to people lost in their own emotional storms, and they'll crash into you seeking rescue. Here's what makes this devastating. These people often perform stability initially to get close to you. They seem fine at first, then gradually reveal the chaos once they think you're invested. By the time you see the pattern, you're already entangled. The deeper problem, your natural instinct to solve problems and your high tolerance for other people's emotions makes you stay longer than you should. What starts as compassion becomes enabling their refusal to do their own emotional work. Why healthy people don't approach. Emotionally stable people recognize your strength but don't feel compelled to merge with it. They have their own regulation systems, so they don't experience the desperate need to attach to yours. Reason 2. Your mystery attracts people who need to fix or figure you out. Here's the second brutal truth. Your natural mystery and emotional privacy create an irresistible challenge for people with savior complexes. Ever notice how certain people become obsessed with understanding you or breaking through your walls? These aren't people who appreciate your privacy. These are people who see your boundaries as puzzles to solve. Here's the psychological mechanism. Your selective vulnerability and layered communication style trigger what psychologists call the fixer fantasy. Certain people interpret your self-containment as hidden damage they're uniquely qualified to heal. The specific types this attracts: codependent women who need to feel needed through healing you. People with savior complexes who want to be the one who got through. emotional archaeologists who see your privacy as buried trauma to excavate. Boundary pushers who interpret your limits as challenges to overcome. People who romanticize broken men and want to be your redemption. Why this creates a toxic pattern? These people aren't interested in who you actually are. They're interested in who they imagine you are beneath your walls. They fall in love with their projection, not your reality. Most people don't see this coming, but fixer types will initially respect your boundaries to gain trust, then gradually escalate their attempts to help you open up. They frame boundary pushing as care and concern when it's actually about their need to fix. Here's what makes this devastating. When you don't have the damage they expected, or when you refuse to be their project, they often become resentful or lose interest. They wanted the drama of saving you, not the reality of respecting you. The deeper problem, your privacy isn't about hiding damage. It's about selective sharing based on earned trust. But fixers interpret any privacy as confirmation of wounds they need to heal. This fundamental misunderstanding poisons the relationship from the start. Why healthy people don't approach. Secure individuals respect boundaries without needing to conquer them. They're comfortable with gradual revelation and don't experience your privacy as a rejection or challenge. Reason 3. Your competence attracts incompetent people seeking rescue. Here's the third brutal truth. Your obvious capability and problem-solving skills make you a target for people who refuse to develop their own competence. Ever notice how helpless people seem to find you in every area of your life? Your competence isn't just attractive. It's a vulnerability that incompetent people exploit. Here's the psychological mechanism. People who haven't developed life skills or problem-solving abilities are constantly seeking someone to outsource their adult responsibilities to. Your Sigma traits: self-sufficiency, resourcefulness, systematic thinking, signal that you can handle what they can't. The specific types this attracts: professionally stagnant people who want you to solve their career problems, financially irresponsible people who see you as their safety net, practically helpless individuals who need constant assistance with basic tasks, decision-paralyzed people who want you to make all their choices, chronic underachievers who want to ride your coattails. Why this creates a toxic pattern? These people don't want to learn from your competence, they want to extract it. You become their personal problem solver, and they become increasingly dependent while contributing nothing. Most people don't realize this, but incompetent people actively seek out highly competent partners because it allows them to avoid developing their own capabilities. Your strength enables their weakness. Your natural problem-solving instinct kicks in automatically when you see someone struggling. But with these people, solving their problems doesn't help them. It just makes them more dependent on you for the next problem. These relationships become parasitic. You're constantly giving time, energy, solutions, resources, while they're constantly taking. The imbalance grows until you're exhausted and they're entitled. Competent individuals appreciate your capability but don't need to exploit it. They have their own resources and see relationships as mutual enhancement, not one-directional rescue. Reason 4. Your non-judgment attracts people with severe character flaws. Here's the fourth brutal truth. Your naturally non-judgmental observation style makes you safe harbor for people with serious ethical or character problems. Ever notice how people with questionable morals seem comfortable around you? Your tendency to observe without immediate judgment creates space that problematic people abuse rather than appreciate. Here's the psychological mechanism. Most people face social consequences for bad behavior because others judge and reject them. But your Sigma trait of observing before judging gives them breathing room. They interpret as acceptance of their flaws. The specific types this attracts: People with flexible ethics who test your boundaries constantly. Manipulators who see your patience as naivety to exploit. Compulsive liars who mistake your observation for belief. Users who interpret your non-judgment as permission to take advantage. Toxic people who've been rejected elsewhere and see you as their last option. Why this creates a toxic pattern. Your non-judgment isn't acceptance, it's information gathering. But problematic people misinterpret your observation period as approval, which emboldens their bad behavior. Most people don't see this coming, but character-flawed individuals specifically seek out non-judgmental people because they can operate longer before facing consequences. Your patience gives them extended access to exploit. Here's what makes this devastating. By the time you've observed enough to reach a judgment, you're often already invested in the relationship. And when you finally enforce boundaries, they're shocked because they thought your observation meant acceptance. The deeper problem, your high tolerance for difference and your judge by patterns, not single incidents, approach means you give too many chances to people who are showing you exactly who they are from the start. Why healthy people don't approach. People with solid character don't need a non-judgmental safety zone. They're comfortable being evaluated because they have nothing to hide. Your observation period doesn't attract them specifically. Reason 5. Your independence attracts clingy, dependent people. Here's the fifth brutal truth. Your self-sufficiency acts like a magnet for people who have zero independence of their own. Ever notice how the neediest people won't leave you alone? Your independence doesn't repel dependent people. It attracts them because they are looking for someone strong enough to carry both people in the relationship. Here's the psychological mechanism. Dependent people are unconsciously seeking someone who won't need anything back. Your sigma independence signals that you won't burden them with needs, which makes you the perfect host for their parasitic attachment style. The specific types this attracts: emotionally dependent people who can't function without constant connection, socially clingy individuals who have no life outside of relationships, identity-less people who need to merge with someone strong, approval-addicted individuals who need constant reassurance, people who can't make decisions without external input. Why this creates a toxic pattern. Your independence should create balanced relationships where both people are whole. Instead, it attracts people who see your strength as permission to be weak. Most people don't realize this, but dependent people are specifically attracted to overfunctioners. They know you'll pick up all the slack they leave, so they don't have to develop their own strength. Here's what makes this devastating. These relationships follow a predictable pattern. The more independent you are, the more dependent they become. Your strength doesn't inspire them to be stronger. It enables them to be weaker. The deeper problem? Your tolerance for solitude means you don't immediately notice when someone is becoming excessively clingy. By the time their dependence becomes obvious, they're already deeply attached and resistant to change. Why healthy people don't approach? Independent people are looking for partners, not parents. They don't experience your self-sufficiency as an invitation to offload their adult responsibilities. Ever notice what connects all these wrong people? They're all seeking to take something from you rather than build something with you. Chaos addicts want your emotional regulation. Fixers want your mystery to solve. Incompetent people want your problem solving. Character-flawed people want your non-judgment. Dependent people want your independence to lean on. Here's the meta pattern. Your sigma strengths are being exploited as resources rather than appreciated as qualities. These people don't want you. They want what you provide. Most people don't see this coming, but the very traits that make you attractive to the wrong people are the same traits that make you invisible to the right people. the brutal truth? Healthy people don't experience compulsive attraction to your traits because they don't need what you're offering. Toxic people experience obsessive attraction because they're desperately seeking what they lack. Here's the part nobody talks about. Healthy, balanced people aren't aggressively pursuing anyone. They're content with their own lives, selective about relationships, and patient about finding genuine compatibility. They don't experience the urgent need to attach that toxic people feel. This means they're not chasing your emotional stability. They have their own. They're not obsessed with solving your mystery. They respect your privacy. They're not seeking rescue from your competence. They handle their own life. They're not exploiting your non-judgment. They don't need special tolerance. They're not clinging to your independence. They have their own, the devastating reality. The right people notice you, but don't feel compelled to pursue you. Meanwhile, the wrong people are obsessively drawn to you because they need what you have. This creates an asymmetry where toxic people flood your life, while healthy people remain at a respectful distance. Here is what you need to understand. You can't change what attracts toxic people, but you can change how quickly you recognize and reject them. The solution isn't dimming your Sigma traits. It's developing faster screening mechanisms. Screen for chaos addiction. Notice how people handle their own emotions in the first few interactions. If they're immediately trauma dumping or creating drama, exit early. Screen for fixer mentality. Notice whether people respect your privacy or try to push past your boundaries for your own good. Anyone trying to save you is toxic. Screen for incompetence. Notice whether people handle their own responsibilities or immediately start offloading problems onto you. Capability should be mutual. Screen for character flaws. Don't give endless chances to people showing red flags. Your first impression is usually correct. Screen for dependence. Notice whether people have their own full lives or whether they're trying to make you their entire world. The key insight: the wrong people reveal themselves quickly if you're watching for these patterns. The problem is that your Sigma patience and tolerance make you ignore red flags longer than you should. Here's the hope. The same traits that attract toxic people can attract healthy people if you actively screen for quality. The right person will appreciate your stability without exploiting it. Respect your mystery without obsessing over it. Admire your competence without depending on it. Value your non-judgment without abusing it. Match your independence with their own. These people exist. They're just not aggressively pursuing you the way toxic people are. This means you need to be more proactive in identifying and engaging with healthy people while being more aggressive in rejecting toxic people early. If you've been stuck in a cycle of attracting the wrong people, it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility to break the pattern. Your Sigma traits aren't the problem. The problem is that you're not screening aggressively enough at the beginning, and you're tolerating problematic behavior too long once it appears. The question isn't why you attract the wrong people. It's whether you'll start rejecting them faster and seeking out the right ones more actively. Stop being passively receptive to whoever approaches you. Start being actively selective about who gets access to your energy, time, and life. Your traits are valuable. Stop giving them away to people who don't deserve them. If this video explained a toxic pattern you've been stuck in for years, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below with the word pattern and tell me which type of wrong person you attract most often. And if this video helped you understand that your traits aren't the problem, your screening process is, hit that like button and subscribe for more insights into breaking toxic relationship cycles. Remember, you're not attracting wrong, you're screening wrong. Fix the filter, change your life. Until next time, be ruthlessly selective. You've seen the pattern. Every relationship ends the same way. She says she loves you, but what she actually loves is the idea of conquering you. And deep down, you've always known the truth. You're not impossible to love because you're broken. You're impossible to love because you refuse to need it. There's a conversation that happens in every Sigma male's life. Someone who cares about you says, you need to let people in. You need to be more vulnerable. You need to learn to need someone. And every time, you nod politely while thinking, they fundamentally don't understand who I am. Today, we're exploring the uncomfortable truth about why Sigma males are structurally impossible to love in the way most people define love, and why you're completely aware of this reality even if you've never said it out loud. This isn't about fixing yourself. This is about understanding why you can't be fixed and why that's not actually a problem. Reason 1, you've eliminated emotional dependency. Here's the first reason you're impossible to love. You've done the psychological work that most people avoid their entire lives. Ever noticed how most relationships are built on mutual neediness, disguised as love? People need their partner for emotional regulation, self-esteem maintenance, life direction, or just to avoid feeling alone. But you've systematically eliminated these dependencies. Here's what makes you impossible. Traditional love requires emotional gaps that another person can fill. But you've spent years filling your own gaps. You've learned to regulate your own emotions, validate your own worth, direct your own life, and be comfortable in solitude. When someone realizes they're not necessary to your emotional survival, many interpret this as not being loved. They confuse your lack of dependency with lack of affection. Most people don't realize this, but your emotional independence doesn't mean you can't love. It means you love from abundance rather than scarcity. But abundance-based love feels less intense to people addicted to need-based love. The deeper reality? You know you're impossible to love because you've watched people fall in love with the idea of fixing you, only to realize there's nothing broken to fix. And once they realize you don't need fixing, they don't know what role to play. Reason 2, your love language is incomprehensible to most. Here's the second reason. The way you express and experience love doesn't match what society taught people to recognize as love. Ever been accused of being cold, distant, or emotionally unavailable by people you genuinely cared about? That's because your respect-based love looks nothing like their emotion-based love. Here's what makes you impossible. Most people express love through constant communication, emotional sharing, quality time, and verbal affirmation. But you express love through respecting boundaries, enabling independence, providing stability, and taking meaningful action. You show you care by not being needy or demanding, but they interpret this as not caring. You demonstrate love through competence and reliability, but they want emotional displays. You express affection by protecting their independence, but they want merging and closeness. You prove commitment through consistent action, but they need constant reassurance. Your love language is essentially invisible to people trained to recognize conventional expressions of love. You're speaking a different language entirely, and most people can't even hear it. You've been loving people in ways they couldn't recognize, and they've been calling you incapable of love while you were actively loving them in your own way. Most people don't see this coming, but your version of love is actually more mature and sustainable than emotion-based love. But maturity looks boring compared to emotional intensity. The deeper reality, you know you're impossible to love because you've realized that what most people call love is actually emotional dependency, control, and possession. And you can't participate in that system without betraying yourself. Reason 3, you won't surrender your autonomy. Here's the third reason. You refuse to merge identities or compromise your independence for relationship maintenance. Ever had someone tell you that relationships require sacrifice, compromise, and putting the other person first? And you thought, that sounds like losing yourself, not finding love? Traditional relationships expect both partners to blur their boundaries, merge their lives, and prioritize the relationship above individual goals. You keep your own space, time, and resources, even in serious relationships. You don't check in constantly or report your whereabouts. You make major life decisions based on your path first, relationship second. You don't abandon your mission, goals, or values for relationship harmony. You refuse to be someone's everything because that's too much responsibility. Most people's relationship fantasy involves two people becoming one unit, but you are fundamentally committed to remaining two complete individuals who choose to walk parallel paths. The brutal truth: partners interpret your boundary maintenance as emotional withholding. They see your independence as fear of commitment. They experience your self-preservation as rejection. Most people don't realize this, but your refusal to merge isn't fear of intimacy. It's protection of authenticity. You know that you can't be yourself if you have to become half of someone else. The deeper reality: you know you're impossible to love because you've watched relationships die the moment you refuse to sacrifice who you are. And you've realized you'd rather be alone and authentic than coupled and diminished. Reason 4: your timeline doesn't match relationship expectations. Here's the fourth reason: you operate on developmental timelines that don't align with conventional relationship milestones. Ever felt pressure to define the relationship, commit to next steps, or accelerate emotional intimacy faster than felt natural? That pressure comes from people operating on external timelines while you operate on internal readiness. Society has relationship scripts with expected timelines: exclusive after X dates, saying I love you after X months, moving in after X time, engagement by X years. But you move based on authentic readiness, not arbitrary schedules. You take significantly longer to open up emotionally than people expect. You need extended time to assess compatibility before committing. You won't say I love you until you genuinely feel it, regardless of timeline. You resist relationship escalation that feels premature to your development. You might suddenly be ready for something years after someone expected it. Most people experience your slow development as lack of interest or commitment phobia. They can't distinguish between not ready yet and not interested. You've lost relationships to impatience, not because feelings weren't real, but because your pace of emotional development was too slow for their timeline expectations. Most people don't see this coming, but your deliberate pacing actually creates stronger foundations when you do commit. But most people don't have the patience to wait for your authentic readiness. The deeper reality: you know you're impossible to love because you've realized that relationship timelines are socially constructed, and you simply can't force your authentic development to match arbitrary schedules. Reason 5: you see through the performance of love. Here's the fifth reason: you can't unsee the difference between genuine connection and performed romance. Ever been in a relationship that looked perfect on paper, but felt hollow in reality? That's because you recognize when someone is performing the script of love rather than experiencing authentic connection. Once you see that most love is actually social performance, fear of loneliness, biological programming, or economic convenience, you can't participate in the illusion anymore. You see when someone loves the idea of you rather than who you actually are. You recognize when I love you means I need you, or I'm afraid to be alone. You notice when romantic gestures are obligatory performances rather than genuine expressions. You see through relationship milestones that are about social proof rather than authentic connection. You recognize when someone wants a relationship more than they want you. Your clarity about these dynamics makes you unable to participate in conventional romantic theater. You can't pretend that performed love is real love. The brutal truth: you've hurt people by being unable to reciprocate performed affection with performed affection. Your authentic responses feel like rejection compared to their scripted declarations. Most people don't realize this, but your inability to participate in love performance isn't cynicism. It's commitment to authenticity. You'd rather have nothing real than something fake. You know you're impossible to love because you've realized that what you need, genuine, unscripted, authentic connection, is so rare that betting on finding it feels statistically absurd. Reason 6. You're psychologically complete. Here's the 6th reason. You've achieved something most people never do. You've become whole without needing another person. Ever noticed how most relationship advice assumes you're incomplete and need someone to complete you? But you've already done the work to complete yourself. Here's what makes you impossible. Conventional romance is built on the premise that two half people become one whole person, but you're already whole, which means relationships can only add enhancement, not completion. You don't have emotional voids for someone to fill. You don't need someone to give your life meaning or purpose. You don't require external validation to maintain self-worth. You don't need saving, fixing, or completion. You're already the person most people are trying to become through relationships. Most people's relationship fantasies involve being needed, but you don't need them in ways that make them feel valuable. Your completeness feels like exclusion to people who want to be necessary. You've watched partners struggle to find their role in your life when you don't have obvious gaps for them to fill. Without neediness to exploit, they don't know how to prove their value. Most people don't see this coming, but your completeness should make relationships better, not impossible. But it only works with someone who's also complete. And complete people are rare. You know you're impossible to love because you've realized that most relationship dynamics are built on mutual incompleteness, and you've eliminated your half of that equation. Reason 7. You prioritize truth over comfort. Here's the 7th and final reason. You value uncomfortable truth more than comforting illusions, even in romantic contexts. Ever been accused of being too honest, too blunt, or not romantic enough? That's because you refuse to sugarcoat reality, even when honesty threatens romantic fantasy. Here's what makes you impossible. Relationships often require strategic dishonesty, white lies, ego protection, comfortable fictions, unspoken truths, but you're constitutionally incapable of maintaining these illusions. You point out incompatibilities that others would ignore for the sake of the relationship. You refuse to pretend things are fine when they're not. You won't fake emotions you don't feel, even when honesty hurts. You address problems directly instead of letting them fester romantically. You tell truths about yourself, them, or the relationship that most people would hide. Most successful long-term relationships require some level of strategic blindness, ignoring certain truths for the sake of harmony. But you can't unsee what you see. You've destroyed relationships by being too honest, not cruelly, but authentically. Your refusal to maintain comfortable illusions makes you dangerous to romantic fantasy. Most people don't realize this, but your commitment to truth isn't lacking tact. It's respecting the other person enough to be genuine rather than patronizing them with lies. You know, you're impossible to love because you've realized that successful relationships often require collaborative delusion, and you're incapable of sustaining delusion even for love. Ever notice what connects all these reasons? You've optimized for authenticity, while everyone else optimizes for connection. Your eliminated dependency, incomprehensible love language, autonomous boundaries, internal timeline, performance immunity, psychological completeness, and truth prioritization all serve one purpose: maintaining authentic self regardless of social consequences. Here's what you've always known. You're not impossible to love because you're broken, damaged, or defective. You're impossible to love because you're complete, authentic, and uncompromising. And those qualities are incompatible with how most people understand and practice love. Most people don't see this coming, but your impossibility isn't a failure. It's a feature. You've chosen authenticity over acceptance, and that choice has consequences. Here's the truth you've been living. Every time you choose to remain authentically yourself instead of becoming conventionally lovable, you're making a choice. You could eliminate your impossibility by creating artificial dependency, performing conventional love languages, surrendering autonomy, accelerating your timeline, participating in romantic theater, accepting incompleteness, prioritizing comfort over truth. But you won't, because you know something most people don't. Being loved as you are matters more than being loved by anyone. And being loved as you are requires finding someone who can love the impossible. Here's what separates you from people who are impossible to love due to damage or dysfunction. You know you're impossible to love, and you're okay with it. You're not in denial. You're not fighting against it. You're not trying to fix what isn't broken. You've accepted that conventional love isn't available to you, not because you're unworthy, but because you're incompatible with conventional love's requirements. And that acceptance is actually peaceful. You'd rather be authentically alone than inauthentically partnered. You'd rather be genuinely yourself than successfully loved as someone you're not. If you've always known you're impossible to love but never understood why, now you know. It's not a deficiency, it's a design feature. You're not broken, you're just built differently. The question isn't whether you can become possible to love. It's whether you'll keep choosing authenticity even knowing it makes you impossible. Some of you will keep choosing yourself over connection, and that's valid. Some of you will eventually find the rare person who can love the impossible, and that's beautiful. But either way, own what you are. Don't apologize for being impossible. Don't try to become possible by betraying your nature. Be impossible. Be authentic. Be yourself. If this video articulated something you've always felt but never could explain, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below with the word impossible and tell me which reason hit closest to home. And if this video gave you permission to accept your impossibility instead of fighting against it, hit that like button and subscribe for more uncomfortable truths about the Sigma male experience. Remember, you're not impossible because you're less than. You're impossible because you're unwilling to be less than authentic. Until next time, own your impossibility.